Hello everybody, this is a video response to Traces of Consciousness. First of all, Traces of Consciousness, I want to thank you for the shoutouts. I appreciate you using my video and for it. That goes a long way, so I appreciate that. Hope to return the favor any way I can. But thank you even more for fighting for the cause of liberty, because that's what really this is all about. I want to encourage you, as well as anybody watching, don't give up. I've mentioned that I've been a libertarian since I was old enough to vote. And when I was a libertarian, people look at the polls and they look at where Gary Johnson is. The numbers seem very small, but when I was starting out as a libertarian, these numbers were completely unheard of for our presidential candidates. So do take courage that things are changing. The mood of the country is changing. The ideas are spreading. And the movement is taking hold. I remind you that it takes a quote. I don't remember off the top of my head who said it, but it does not take a majority to prevail. It takes an irate, restless minority, keen on spreading and lighting the brush fires of liberty. It takes people like us who are dedicated to the cause. People like us who are willing to spread this message, get involved in this message, and Traces of Consciousness, you are one of those people. Some of my subscribers, your subscribers, people have viewed my videos and made phone calls, written emails, things like this. Every one of you is part of that irate, restless minority, and I thank you for it. You are doing a great service for your country and for your people, for your fellow countrymen, for your children, for the future of your nation. If there is one. But yes, I do thank you for that. I want to offer you some encouragement as well and some explanation. So you seemed a bit confused about the polls. First of all, the one that you referenced, and by the way, before I go on, there's three things that I love to do. They're my favorite things in the world to do: read, write, and talk. If you've watched my videos, you'll notice I ramble a lot. You'll notice I like to talk. I also like to read and write. So, I have some reading material that I'm going to put in the description. So, any story that I reference, hopefully I'll be able to include in the description of this video. First of all, the Rasmussen poll that was the first poll that you referenced. This was a huge victory for our campaign. I made a video about this a while ago, which is talking about how Rasmussen had released a very condescending press release, basically saying they weren't going to include Gary Johnson no matter how many of us called, no matter how many of us emailed them, and therefore we should just shut up about it because it wasn't going to happen, because Gary Johnson's not going to get any support anyway, and he's not going to have an impact on the election anyway. So basically trying to tell us to give up. I responded by making a video expressing my outrage at their exclusion and their condescending tone, and urging my followers and my supporters to ramp up the efforts with Rasmussen. And wouldn't you know it, a week or two later this story comes out. Rasmussen finally includes Gary Johnson in their polling. You noted the highlighted part of the poll where he was 16% favorable, 20% unfavorable, 63% don't even know enough about him. And that's where the second part of this fight comes in. We can't just get Gary Johnson in the polls. We have to get him to rise in the polls. And that means spreading this message in any way that you can. There are news articles that allow you to comment. There are blogs. There are YouTube videos, Facebook, MySpace, Google+, whatever the case may be, Twitter, of course. I've participated in Twitter bombs. If you want to know about those, you can ask me about them. We have one coming up this Sunday. So you know what? Again, another link in the description. I'll put a link to the group that does the Twitter bombs. It's a Facebook group, and they do Twitter bombs. Okay, yeah. But anyway, the poll that you were referencing, I digress. The poll that you were referencing didn't just have the favorability numbers, as you seem to think was the case, but the electoral support was in there. It was about at 1%, which was a little discouraging, but another poll that you looked at was a CNN poll, so there's another major poll that included Gary Johnson, and he, wouldn't you know it, he rose to about 4%. And yet another notable poll, the Reason Group poll, recently came out and has Gary Johnson at about 6% electoral support. So you can see, first of all, he is slowly but surely being started to be included. Doesn't mean we shouldn't keep the pressure on. We certainly should, but it does mean we can be encouraged. There is some fruit to our labors, even if it's limited. And again, it's a long-term thing. By the way, even if Gary Johnson doesn't win the election, a 5% electoral support on election day will be a major achievement for the Libertarian Party. This means federal matching funds. This means better ballot access, which means we can spend more of our resources on actually campaigning rather than trying to sue and counter-sue and everything else with the Republicans trying to force us off the ballot in every state, like my home state of Pennsylvania, which we finally won the challenge, and of course the Republicans are going to appeal it because God forbid there be competition on the ballot in a state where Mitt Romney's not going to win anyway, because this is a blue state. I hate to tell you. I hate to tell you, Romney supporters. PA is a blue state. Has been for a long time. But anyway, where was I? Yeah, the CNN poll had him at 4%. Reason Group had him at 6%, 5% in the national polls. On election day, 5% of the national vote will be a major achievement for the Libertarian Party. It will help us in the midterms, and it will help us in 2016, if it should come to that. So don't be discouraged. This isn't fruitless. This isn't for nothing. And no matter what, I do see history in the making. I believe Gary Johnson will rise and continue to rise in the polls as he has. He's currently conducting a college tour. That's going to get his name out there through local media coverage of these events, college kids going to these speeches, saying, wow, what an awesome presidential candidate, I'm voting for this guy, I'm going to tell my friends about him, I'm going to tell my parents about him, my brothers, my sisters, you know, word of mouth kind of thing. There'll be 40 colleges total. Jim Gray visits 20, Gary Johnson visits 20. In addition to that, the Gary Johnson campaign, thanks to the donations that you mentioned, will be launching, or is launching now, and are currently airing national radio ads. So I hope that they will continue to have these donations so they can continue that effort. But yes, I see Gary Johnson going nowhere but up. I'm very enthusiastic. You know, as far as the Commission on Presidential Debates, just to let you know, Ross Perot was polling at 7%, as you noted, in his first election. That's why he was in the debates. He was polling at 7%. The minimum requirement back then was 5%. And because the two parties did not want a repeat of what Ross Perot accomplished, or possibly a multiplication of it. Because had Ross Perot did run for re-election, or not for re-election, but he did run a second campaign, and he didn't get into the national debates. So the first election, Ross Perot polls at 7%, goes from 7% to about 19% of the national votes. maybe Ross Perot will run again and do much better in the next election, and all bets are off then. So the Commission on Presidential Debate says we need to raise the bar a little. We don't want a crackpot like Ross Perot here again. Let's make it 15%. Because they knew this was basically going to be impossible with the current mood of the country back then for a third-party candidate to achieve that. And again, Gary Johnson gets 5%, 2012. Maybe he gets 15% in 2016. You never know. The mood of the country is changing. The ideas are spreading. We're beginning to open our eyes. There's now more independence. I think it's about 38% Republican. I forget what the exact number was. But if you take it roughly, just roughly, it's about 1/3 of each: Democrat, Independent, Republican. Slightly more Republicans than Democrats and Independents, but more and more Independents are coming. And third parties as well. So the mood of the country is changing. People are starting to see the foreign policy isn't working, the economics isn't working, the social policy isn't working, the drug policy is not working. We learned this lesson very quick and during the 1920s. We're a little bit slower in the 2000 teens. My point being, don't give up. It's not over yet. I will, in addition to the articles that I reference in this video, in this video description, I will also be posting the phone number as well as the email address for the Commission on Presidential Debates, if the email address is still valid. But as far as the polling agencies, those are available in the video that you shared. How to get Gary Johnson into the debates and the polls, or the polls and debates, whatever it was. I'm very tired. I work night shift and I just got back from work, so I should be asleep by now. So if I'm not thinking straight, forgive me. But I will put the contact information in this description. I got, for the polling agencies, I got the contact info from YouTuber Libertarian, so I thank you for that, Libertarian. And you can continue to use that information as well. Getting Gary Johnson in the polls is still worth the effort, because the more polls he's in, the more people see his name, they get curious, they type him into Google, they do some research, they like what he has to say, they vote for him. So even just being included in the polls is a benefit. And more polls will see he's gaining support. More people will report on him. This guy might be a spoiler. Let's interview him on CNN. You know, there's endless possibilities. I plan on doing a video in the future where I'll talk about practical ways that we can campaign. Hopefully either in the next few days. If not in the next few days, definitely this Tuesday, because I will be off work, so I'll have more time and energy. But just keep a lookout for that. Find creative ways that you can campaign for Gary Johnson. If you have any suggestions, you can inbox them to me, or comments, or whatever. But again, I just want to reiterate, we have to spread this message. If it means making phone calls to the Commission on Presidential Debate or polling agencies, let's do it. If it means writing emails to these people, let's do it. If it means writing emails to major network shows saying, why don't you have Gary Johnson on your show? Do it. If it means blogging, do it. Facebooking, do it. If it means making YouTube videos, do it. If it means buying a sign or a bumper sticker. Whatever we can do to spread this message, it's up to us. $600,000 is a very impressive amount for a third-party candidate. However, it is not enough to run a national campaign independently. It needs grassroots support. Grassroots is what will win this country. So I urge everybody to get involved. I thank everybody, my subscribers, my supporters, my followers, as well as individuals like Traces of Consciousness and those who follow him. I thank you for getting involved, because this is a critical thing to get involved in, and you are commendable for doing it. However, please don't stop, please don't quit, and please don't be discouraged. Rome wasn't built in a day. It's possible that the Republic of the United States will not be restored in a day, or even in one election cycle. And by the way, the president isn't the only part. We need to support all libertarian candidates that we can. Contact your libertarian party, or at least see what candidates are running so you can vote for them on election day. It revolves around the presidency. Like I said, Gary Johnson gets 5%. Libertarians have a much larger advantage, both in the midterms and in 2016. So I urge everyone to get involved, spread this message, keep doing what you're doing, do more than what you're doing right now. Whatever the case may be, thank you very much. And thank you, Traces of Consciousness, for your response, for your shout-outs, and everything else. We're in this together. I encourage you not to give up. Thank you very much. God bless. And keep fighting, and I will fight with you.